things start going faster and lights on the screen begin to flash, almost in a strobing effect.
Mm-hmm.
So not like that one. That reminds me a lot of Space Age and Dragon Quest or whatever, right? That like you dodge
Space Ace
stuff.
and Dragon Slayer.
Yeah,
Yes.
Dragon Slayer. That where you like just go through and dodge stuff. Are we talking something like that? Or are we talking?
No, we're talking generations before that. That came out much later. We're talking about more of, you've got a T-junction head, and you've got to hold the joystick to the left until you get to that junction, and then it's up or down.
Oh, and you're flying through a thing. It's
Right,
not
and
like
I think
okay.
that the graphics on the screen maybe are rotating for that, but this is my guess.
Sure.
And so this is kind of almost 3D graphics. Then.
It's in some of the stuff that I came across. Most video games of the time, if you think of, everybody's seen Super Mario Brothers and the original arcade of Super Mario Brothers or Donkey Kong, and they were in raster graphics, which is just little pixels that turn on to paint an image.
Little 8-bit, yeah.
Right, little 8-bit images. Well, there is discussion that Polybius was a vector graphics game, which is more along the lines of, if you remember, like you said, Joe, Asteroids. There was a game, and we're going to talk about it later on, but Battlezone?
Battlezone is what I was thinking of, because that was also an Atari game, which came out not too long after Asteroids, and that was actually a 3D game.
Yeah, and if you haven't heard of any of these games, take a minute and just do a Google image search, and you'll see what we mean by simplistic line graphic work. And vector graphics, and this is kind of a computer thing in terms of how things work, but vector graphics are smaller and easier to render than raster would be. So if your game can do these in vector, then it's faster, especially with a processor in 1980 or 81, which is, compared to today's standards, a snail.
Yeah.
It's going to be able to go faster, which is going to be revolutionary for anybody who they've never seen this happen before. So I've heard discussions that it was some experiment to use the vector graphics. If that's right or not, I don't know.
So we're not talking like just an animated sequence, because that's all that like Space Age was really. I mean, that in terms of programming, it wasn't much more complex than Pac-Man or anything like that. It was just that they had done these like full animated scenes.
Correct.
So we're talking like
Really
simple.
basic.
Okay.
Extremely basic. Again, Pong was kind of still,
Yeah.
the
All right, that's
grandfather of all of these games
Yeah.
at that time.
Oh my God, Pong! I'm still waiting for the movie, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Another game that was kind of vector based, and this comes up in the research saying that maybe this was based upon it, is Atari put out a game called Tempest. And I know that we've watched the video of how Tempest works, which is, it's vector graphics and you're kind of sliding around the edges of a maze, avoiding things and shooting stuff. People say that it could have been based on that or a beta version of that, because Tempest, according to everything, came out about 4 to 6 months after this supposedly hit portals.
So now the image that I have in my brain is, in Star Wars when he like has his like little guiding thing come down where he's like gonna do, and it's like
when he's in the trench.
Yeah, when he's in the trench.
Yes.
That's now in my brain.
And
that's what that's like.
That's basically what the graphics
Okay,
were.
yeah.
It's that level of sophistication.
And it's moving, quote unquote, right past you. And I guess if that were going fast enough and you were trying to dodge things and there were lights flashing at you, okay, I'm getting a good picture here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds like a fun game. I want to play.
And none of these games that we've talked about so far are anything that would give someone a seizure. But I did watch, and I know, again, I put this up, and I know you guys have watched it. There's a current game out there, was that Super Hexagon? It's a game that basically flashes, and everything's rotating and spinning. If it was in line with that, and again, ladies and gentlemen, you might want to Google this. You might want to just take a pause.
This one especially, you should,
Pause this, go watch it for a minute and a half, and then come back to us.
We'll wait.
Actually, for anybody, if you do have epilepsy, you probably don't want to go watch that one, because that would be a bad thing.
Yeah.
So, everybody else go look. Well,
so welcome back.
Yep. That was crazy to watch. I know.
Yeah.
Now you kind of get how somebody could have a seizure, because
Right?
it's not easy to watch that stuff flashing around.
Yeah, and then imagine playing it. Like, you're just passively watching it. Imagine, like, trying to be in charge of that thing.
Oh,
I would imagine that you'd be like seasick after a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine that going.
No, it's not just watching it makes me dizzy.
Yeah. So let's move forward.
Okay.
Into Polybius.
Oh, Polybius.
The actual person, Polybius.
The Greek historian?
Yes, because the name of the game is based upon a real person. And Polybius lived, the actual guy, he was a Greek historian, lived in 264 to 146 BC.
Okay.
He was a historian. He had some views on how things should be recorded, which is fine. But really, what I like about this guy, and I didn't really know about it until I started doing the research, is he was one of the first. He came up with an early cryptographic system to use for communications over long distance.
Oh.
So it's called the Polybius Square.
Okay.
And what it is you take a grid of 5 across and 5 down. And you start in the upper left-hand square, and you put A, B, C, D, and E, and then you go down to the next line. And there's 26 letters in the alphabet, so he combined I and J into the same one.
Yeah.
If you're communicating over a long distance, you can use flashes of some kind. And you know that the first number is going to be the top of the grid, and the second number is going to be on the vertical axis of that grid. And then you put them together, and you know it's B, and then E, and so on. And you can build sentences so that great distances, which again, I mean, it would have taken me a week to write over there,
Right.
but it took me an hour to transmit the message using flares.
Sure.
Much simpler.
Yeah.
So I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
I don't know why he's referenced. Maybe it's because of the fact that this is supposed to be some kind of puzzle game. But
They say on one account of it that it was like a rotating square that was like
yeah,
Yeah, like a 3D
Puzzles.
3D
cube.
puzzle.
yeah, so maybe
Yeah.
it was
Might
in
have been.
reference to that.
But the other reference that I was thinking about was that he was also, besides being a cryptographer, he was a historian. And one of his things was he felt that any historian should never put anything into the historical record without actually interviewing somebody and finding out if it was true or not. You know, which when you think about it, it might be, you know, this whole thing. If
kind
it
of
were,
the gag of this whole
if-
story.
Exactly. So,
Oh
yeah.
man, so okay,
Yeah.
already even in the name, right? We've got two different directions, right? I have found a way that this references what the game is, and it totally makes sense. And Joe has found a way
To discount the whole
totally
thing.
discount the whole thing.
Yeah. Somebody was playing a joke, and the name of the game is itself part of the joke. It's a broad hint as to, you know, what the story is all about, really.
Well,
So-
and that's a great segue into the next bit of data that I want to go into, which would be who made the game. We don't
government.
know. We don't know who made it. Atari and Sega were kind of the big boys on the block when it came to video games at this time.
Right.
They were the superpowers.
They also would have been the ones that would have had the resources to say, here's 7 boxes, let's go beta test them.
To
Right.
develop. I mean, they had the R&D money.
Right.
They were creating all of these games, so they totally had the money to just, let's try
Right.
this too.
As opposed to a small indie label that's just going to do the one thing that they know works.
And plus, they had the money to send ex-Marines in sweatshirts around to watch the kids play the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of conjecture that one of these two major labels made it. There is a image going around on the internet of the title screen of the game. And actually, I'll be honest, I've seen 3 different images of the game. I've seen the title screen. I've seen a black and white of the cabinet itself. And I have supposedly seen images of the city of Portland's, the licensing stickers for it to be put into an arcade and played.
I feel like I want to see these pictures. Also, I want to talk to the person who licensed.
Did you?
because-
Yeah, I wasn't even aware of that. You have to have a license, like a license sticker
Well,
on
if
an
you look at-
arcade
if you
So
look
game.
people don't have epileptic fits. Like, they're supposed to test
I
these
have
things.
seen stickers on games. I'm assuming it's licensing. Again, Here's the problem. I don't know if it's from this game. I don't even know if it belongs to a video game. And I don't even know if they're real. I've just seen these. But
I've got to go to an arcade now and check out the machines.
Good luck finding one.
Yeah. There's still a few around.
There's still a few. Not many, but a few.
I know the city, like, they license things like cigarette machines. Mm-hmm. I know they do that kind of stuff, but I'm not sure about arcade games. I mean, actually, I wouldn't put it past them.
You know what? I've seen stickers on games that look like they're officially issued, so I'm presuming that at least in this city that happens. But I don't know exactly what they're for. But what I'm saying is that I cannot say these are real because they're the same 3 ones over and over. People have tried to check for photoshopping and all this stuff. The title screen of Oblivious, it is 8-bit graphics, so it is from that era. It looks like it's from that era. On the title screen, there is a name from a company, and Joe, you're going to have to help me out with this. How do you say this?
Sinneschlüssen. German.
It's German, and in German, that means deletion or erasure of senses, as in your senses of the world. So...
Actually, I think I mispronounced that. Sorry.
Okay.
Sinneschlüssen.
Okay.
So there's that.
Yeah.
But there's no record of this company.
Yeah.
We don't know who this company is. Nobody can find them. They don't seem to exist currently, and there's no records of them, putting out other games or anything like that.
So I'm going to find my German dictionary, but I'm guessing right now that this word means Men in Black, or give them a conspiracy. I'm not sure. One or the other.
There is another direction that we can take for who created it, which is there supposedly is a guy named Cybernogi. I'm not exactly positive. Get on the enunciation
I'd
of
say
that.
Nogi.
Nogi,
I'm going for Nogi.
No, I would.
Yeah,
all right. Well,
Cybernogi.
Cybernogi is, according to Usenet members, which...
Usenet. Remember Usenet.
Yeah, well, according to Usenet, Cybernogi created Oblivious. And Cybernogi is a German programmer, and people believe that he or she, I should say, created the game as an April Fool's joke. Evidently, Cybernogi's been known to put out April Fool's jokes to people on the net.
So he created the game, or he created the legend of the game? Created
the whole thing, as in made the whole thing
so
up
he made
as
the story
a gag for April Fools.
Yeah.
But here's the problem is that, okay, well, people say, okay, well, I think he did it. And then here's the stories, but I haven't seen any research, and I couldn't find anything that would link the two together.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, oh, that jerk does that stuff all the time. I'll bet that jerk did this.
Does that jerk usually take credit for his April Fool pranks?
I don't believe so. That's the thing, is that people will eventually come back and say, we're outing you as the one who did that. Whatever. Maybe. Maybe not.
Yeah, besides which, it's not exactly an arrestable offense. But,
okay,
so next week, this will be a 2-part episode. We are going to fly to Germany personally and subject Cybernogi to some intensive interrogation.
Yeah.
We'll
we
fly
can
the
do
truth
that,
out of him.
or we can just keep going.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We should probably just keep going.
Yeah, we should just keep going.
Well, okay.
Okay.
I want to go to Germany.
I know you do.
But I really want to electrocute somebody.
No, only if you use the Baghdad battery. Okay. We're going to move forward into the places that it could have been released, so where the game cabinet actually go. I've come across a couple of bits of information that say there was an arcade here in Portland called Backwater Alleys, which evidently is closed down long ago. They're reported as one of the places that supposedly got the game cabinet. Another one is Blue Diamond, which is still around, but Blue Diamond is actually a bar now.
I mean, it's possible, but I mean, that place is a bar restaurant. It's got a full kitchen and a full bar and everything. And I suppose at some point somebody might have...
Supposedly the building was renovated in the 90s, and that's when it became a bar.
And
so we got Blue Diamond. I've seen reports that say that it was in Gresham, Oregon, which is just outside of the city of Portland. Because, again, the story says it was released in suburbs So Gresham could be a plausible candidate. But then again, I've also heard that it was released in Kansas, which is not a suburb of Portland.
Yeah.
Shockingly.
Yeah.
It's
You
not.
know, they're so close together.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know where it's at.
Yeah. What, are you talking about Blue Diamond?
No, I'm saying I don't know where it was released at.
Yeah.
We don't know exactly where this thing was at.
Yeah, they did say suburbs, and I don't know why they picked the suburbs.
I don't either.
Yeah.
It's kind of an odd place to say.
Well, the thing about it is, if you put it in various suburban places, then your men in black are going to have to drive farther distances to go out there and monitor the teenagers playing it.
Maybe.
I would think you'd want to keep them close in.
I
Reduce
think
commute time.
suburbs make sense because
That's where the kids are at.
that's where the kids are. That's where the bored kids are.
Mhm.
But it's also, if you do want to keep it under wraps, right? It's not like the most central hub.
Mm-hmm.
There's not as many kids
Keep them
around.
far
Not
away.
as much
Yeah,
exposure.
they're
No.
dispersed. They're
Yeah.
dispersed far.
So if you
far.
decide to
Yeah.
pull it after a couple weeks, you can just pull it and it won't
Mm-hmm.
be like this massive outcry. Not that Portland was giant in the 80s,
No.
but it'd be less of an outcry at least.
Mhm.
Right. And I want to jump to a point that we've talked about before, which I know we were talking about the pictures of the cabinet and the title screen and all that, because that's how we got the name of the company. One of the things that I couldn't ever come to grips with when it came to this title screen shot is how did somebody get it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Here's the thing. Remember these cabinets, it's a glass face with a video monitor underneath the case, and it's a CRT monitor. It's old school monitor. So even using 35 millimeter film, the screen rolls, you're not going to get a good clear image. And these images that are put up of this title screen,
They look like screenshots.
they look like screenshots. So how did somebody get this screenshot
Yeah.
if the machine was only out there for a very short time?
Yeah,
So
although I guess to counter that, in terms of things that are coming up in my brain right
Yeah.
now, why choose Portland for your hoax place? Like, what a weird place to pick as a hoax place.
it really is.
Okay, some tiny town in the middle of Kansas. Okay, sure, right? Or some really big metropolitan hub.
like
sure.
New York or something.
But
Yeah,
Portland, Oregon in the 80s is the weirdest, literally the weirdest spot that you could pick, I feel like.
But it still is, even
I guess
the
more now,
21st century,
there's
but-
more people here.
Yeah,
there's
definitely.
more hipsters.
But it was
there's
a bit more of a backwater back in those days.
But it wasn't totally backwards. So it's
No.
just, to me, it's such a weird
It's unusual.
place.
It's not where you would normally want to go to market something.
So that,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also not the kind of place that you would pick as a hoax, right? If you were gonna pick a place to start a hoax.
Well, that is an interesting
Story?
point. Is that you would think that people generally, when they're making up stories about America, the story is set in New York, Chicago, San Francisco, Los Angeles,
Or some
mean-
tiny place nobody's ever
or
heard
maybe
of.
Miami.
or
Right.
somewhere
Or-
in the middle
or-
of Iowa.
Yeah.
something
Or
like that
some
would say. Yeah.
some strange,
Some
quirky
small
little town called
place
Silent
in-
Hill
yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah.
Some creepy little place. Yeah. But,
Again,
yeah. So that's kind of
another,
interesting. That's-
Another question mark on this whole
Yeah.
thing. This whole thing so far, and I don't know if you two have gotten this impression, but there's just question marks all over the place, written in red ink.
Yeah.
What? Huh?
Yeah, I
Huh?
totally agree with that, and I think it's as much evidence that I feel disproves it. There's also
That flip
almost
side.
the exact same amount of evidence
Almost
that's
enough to
proving
make it.
Yeah.
See it actually happening.
plausible, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're halfway through, right? We
Yeah.
haven't even gotten halfway through. This
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. We got a ways to go, and we're gonna move on to Joe's favorite subject, which is the supposed Men in Black.
yeah.
Okay, so here's the thing: is that it is not unheard of for the government to get involved with games, to use them as a way to find people with abilities to try to recruit them. Battlezone that we talked about
Yeah.
earlier, which anybody who doesn't know what Battlezone is, it's this old cabinet game where you put your face into a periscope and you drove a tank around and you were blasting enemy tanks and driving around.
Yeah, and flying saucers would also swoop in, and you have to blast them too.
Right.
So do you know what that thing was before it became a video game?
I heard it was a Bradley troop carrier
Yes,
simulator.
it was a training module for Bradley carriers or tanks. So this is what soldiers did before they went out in the field, is they learned to drive the tank in a VR situation.
Well, I mean, airplane pilots do it to this day. They use, flight simulators that are open to the public. People do use them in like a less sophisticated sense. But this has been a thing forever. That's how you train.
Rainbow Six, when that first came out, evidently the scores and stuff like that were being fed back to the army or the military.
So
is
Rainbow,
what I've heard. And again, I can't validate this.
Was that an online game?
It was game or something like that. It came out a good number of years ago, but supposedly you could register scores. So I don't know. I mean, I hear these things.
Yeah, it's a weird thing.
But it's not unheard of.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of creepy stories of, I played this sniper game, and when I got to the end, the phone number came up, and I called the phone number, and it was the Secret Service, and they offered me a job. I don't know.
I tend to, I mean, I'm totally on board with the sinister government theory, but at the same time, I'm totally on board with the incompetent government theory.
Yeah.
And I don't think they had the brains to come up with ideas like this.
Well, but here's the thing. Okay, let's just say that somebody was collecting data out of the machines.
Yeah.
What could you get out of a 1981 video game processor besides the high score?
Well, okay.
They're not that sophisticated.
Yeah,
they can't record video. They can't record audio. So, I mean, is it just they're doing duration and score? I mean, it doesn't seem like you could get that much information.
The data you could get out of it would be like, maybe how often it was played and how much it was played. You can get that kind of stuff. But of course, if you're sending men in black around and just like skulk in the shadows and watch the kids play, and they're noticing the kids lining up around the block to play this game, they don't really need to download the data about how frequently the game was played.
Yeah,
they know it's a big hit.
Actually, to me, the idea of them just hanging around makes way more sense than the idea of them coming to collect data. I guess maybe if they saw someone that was playing it a lot, they would want to know what your high score was or something like that. But I think this seems much more like a situation where they would want to know how it was affecting people more than they would want to know about high scores or how long it was played or anything like that.
Yeah.
The machine itself wouldn't give you that information. I mean, now it's okay, let's go with the sinister government again.
Yeah. And
let's say, it's plausible that they had some kind of video recorder, and it would have been a video recorder, would have been on tape, in the box, filming everybody who was playing it. So they were going and changing the tape.
Yeah.
Literally changing the tape.
Yeah.
I guess it could have been, too, they might have been the handles that were used for playing the game. Maybe they had galvanic response mechanisms built in them, so they could actually probably download.
Wait, what is that?
They could actually from what's going on in the electrical currents in your skin, you can tell what's going on with your nervous system.
Oh,
and so
in the 80s they can.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah.
But again, these are men in black, so they probably had some sophisticated tools that the rest of us didn't have back then.
Sure, I guess
I think what it really was. Should I save my summation of what I think it really was until the end? Okay, let's start.
I think it makes sense to me that if you're going to send some agents to stand and watch behavior, if they say, "Oh yeah, we're techs for this thing, and we're going to have to go in once a day just to make sure it's working," that's a great cover story for why they're hanging out all day instead of "Oh, we're just here watching the kids."
Yeah,
right? I mean, it's better to say,
it's
we have to open it up once a day.
Yeah.
For no good reason except for to have a good cover story. I don't know. Sinister government. There's all this.
Yes.
I mean.
All right. So the machine disappeared.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was taken away.
It was taken away.
And probably executed.
And probably had a blindfold, got a cigarette, put in front of a firing range.
Yeah. Sorry, Polybius, you suck.
Well, now. Everybody is saying, well, where's the ROM of it? Which, if you don't know, a ROM is read-only memory. It's a game you can download and play on your computer. And they do remakes of all these old games.
Dude, this is my favorite thing in the entire world, ROMs.
Really?
ROMs are cool.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time playing my all-time favorite game, which is a SNES game that you can only play on your computer now. I mean, unless you have an SNES. So.
Which one?
It's Earthbound.
Never heard of that one.
Oh, it's so good. You should. We'll have this discussion later.
I need to get the ROM for Asteroids.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, so a ROM is a recreation of the game.
Yeah.
And there have been, just like everything else, a bunch of... Oh, I've got a ROM of the game.
Okay, let's see it. Oh, I lost it.
It got deleted. Or the most famous one out there is everybody would get this ROM and it would load the title screen that was on the internet. It would make this weird noise and then it would crash.
Okay, so I have a big problem with this. Again, saying, I love ROMs. There aren't a lot of ROMs for things that have been only arcade games because
That's really hard to translate.
It's really hard to translate. So, 99%, I guess this is a made up statistic, but the majority of the ROMs out there are games that have been on console.
They've been
platforms.
translated by the company that made it.
Of any kind. So games that exist solely in arcade box format. I know this because I have an arcade game that I'm obsessed with and literally can play for hours. And I wanted to find the ROM of it one time, and I had to do a bunch of research. And it comes out that unless it's been released on a console, your likelihood of finding a ROM of it is none. Yeah, it's just not going to happen because it's so hard to translate.
That makes me sad.
Into a ROM.
It's like now I can't
I'm sure
find
somebody's
Asteroids.
just totally reprogrammed.
I'm sure somebody has. 'Cause,
into it.
it's so freaking classic. I mean,
Yeah.
how could you not?
Well, and it's easy.
Yeah, that's true. It's pretty simple of a game.
Yeah. So, but with something like this, my belief of a ROM existing in any capacity is very low.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to apologize. Quite obviously, we're geeking out on video games.
Yeah, maybe we are.
Sorry.
We're sort of like
I've been holding back not to just run down that road.
we've
so
sort
it's
of headed
okay.
off into the weeds,
Yes,
haven't
we
we?
did.
Yes,
But
we have.
Here's the thing: if this is a ROM, it should work. And we're going to go back to the big bad government conspiracy theory.
Ooh, yeah.
People have said, well, it's a direct translation, but of course the hardware in a PC doesn't work like the hardware in the actual machine does, so it can't do the mind control voodoo.
No.
So it crashes.
That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard
So
in
it
my
crashes.
entire
I
life.
know that.
I'm
And
so sorry. Anyone, I'm so sorry.
It does not hold water for me, but it is funny that I see this. Now, I also will say that there are a bunch of people who say they have ROMs that aren't actual ROMs, because what they've done is they've taken the descriptions of the game and then they've recreated it the way they think it would have been.
Yeah, which is really interesting to me, actually.
It is interesting, and I've watched them,
Uh-huh. But
I gotta be honest, it looks like a lame game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Based on the way people have built it.
Uh-huh.
It also, again, I can see why you get a seizure. Because
And-
it's nothing
Right.
but flashing lights and moray panels.
yeah, and that's the other thing too, is that perhaps this game actually existed. Perhaps they did put some beta versions in arcades, and perhaps it was just so lame that nobody played it, and that's why it disappeared forever.
Yeah,
Could
and
be,
that
yeah.
the whole urban myth of people
People
lining
up around the block
has
to
just
see
kind
it.
of been the
Yeah.
built-up version
Yeah.
of it.
Could
Maybe.
be.
Yeah,
Could be.
could have been just a really lame game.
Or it seems lame to us because, our games now are super
so
awesome.
Grand
awesome.
Theft Auto
Yeah, I know.
18.
Right, but and again, we were talking about this whole introduction of vector graphics, and maybe it was super flashing lights and everything, and you just kind of got carried away with it. And the reason it was addictive was because you were so busy paying attention to the flashing lights that you sucked at the game.
Mhm.
Right? It's just these graphics are so cool. What's going on here? And then you die a million times.
So far, we have a lot of information that basically is uncorroborated.
Yeah.
And at this point in my research, I would have dumped this story.
Mm.
Except there's one character that we haven't talked about.
Santa.
Not Santa. It's a guy by the name of Stephen Roach.
Oh.
Well,
Stephen Roach, he is based out of the Czech Republic.
Okay.
In March of 2006, he went on a bunch of forums and he made a post. And it's the same post. He literally cut and pasted. He wrote this thing up and cut and pasted it every time.
mm.
He claims that he was involved in the creation of Polybius
Oh.
and has a bunch of details about the game and its history in terms of how it was made, why it was made, where all of this stuff, which we're going to go into.
Okay.
I will say right now that there is a lot of doubt cast upon the validity of this guy's story.
Okay.
People have picked it apart. He's done some interviews, and people have turned around and said, well, you know, it's pretty funny. His answers almost exactly match what was on the Wikipedia page about this. Okay, well, the problem is Wikipedia is constantly changing.
Right.
And
He
so
could have
be-
updated it.
He could have updated it, or somebody could have read his details, put them on the wiki page, and then everybody else would, oh, well, that's weird. They match.
Right.
Almost word for word.
Yeah.
See that, yeah.
Take
And
that-
he
take
could
this
have
with a grain
actually
of salt.
have edited the wiki page himself and put
Yeah.
that stuff in there.
Yeah, he could have been an updater.
I guess
You never know.
my big question is like, why wait till 2006?
Well,
You know?
we'll get into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's just start at the beginning. So Joe, help me again. What is the name? How do you pronounce this?
Oh, actually, they're spelling it differently now.
Sinschlossen?
Yeah, it's Zinneschlossen.
Okay.
And actually, this is the spelling is different.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah,
That's fine.
but-
Because this is how he
Yeah.
pronounces it or
Okay,
writes it
Sinneschlossen.
versus the internet.
Yeah.
But he said this was a company that he and a couple other amateur programmers had put together in 1978, and they were approached in 1980 by a South American company that he wouldn't give the name of for legal reasons, I guess. They paid him. He probably signed an NDA, a
Yeah.
non-disclosure agreement, so he's keeping his mouth shut on that, which is understandable. They came and said that they wanted an arcade game made that was going to use puzzle elements, but as we talked about before, they wanted to use vector. Okay, well, this all makes sense so far. So they make this this puzzle game, and it's got all this different stuff going on, things that haven't been seen in video games, and they're all agog. They're really excited. And then the game gets released by this company. One of the places, he says that there were 7 cabinets made.
Okay.
One of the places here in Portland, Oregon that he says it was released was the Lloyd District.
Okay, wait. I'm just gonna go back to like my previous statement about like Portland being a weird place to pick, right? And then like furthermore, the Lloyd District, especially in the 80s, was kind of a dump.
Well, yeah.
I'm trying to find like a good word for that, and I feel like
It
I
wasn't
can
a
say
great
that.
neighborhood.
I mean,
Yeah.
I was born in 1987 in the Lloyd District, so in the 90s it was a dump. In the 80s it was a dump. And it's not even like a very well publicized area of Portland. So for somebody to be creating a hoax by saying, oh, it's Portland, and then to like further it by saying, oh, and it was in the Lloyd District, like that's such an obscure place to
Yeah.
say something like
That's a little
this
mysterious.
foot.
Although, finish your
No, I
thought.
just feel like, I
Yeah.
think for whatever reason, I feel like it leads credence to the story.
Well, interestingly too, the Blue Diamond, which is now a bar, is kind of on the southern periphery of the Lloyd District.
Okay.
Yeah,
There you
that's-
go.
Yeah. No.
So there again, weird things stitched together in
Yeah.
the story.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Okay.
So he goes on to say that about a week, or not even a week, kids were lining up. They were all enjoying it. And then a 13-year-old boy has an epileptic seizure while playing the game. So all the executives are freaking out because they think that, oh God, we've made the worst thing in the world. We're going to give people seizures. Before they pull it, of course, now word gets out, according to Roach, that word gets out, and now this is a fun game to play. It's teenage boys daring their buddies to go play it, or their buddies going, I'm tough, I'll play it, it won't hurt
no.
me, which does not help the entertainment.
Sure.
So
of course.
this is all bad.
And he said he say that they had play tested it for like a really long time
Yeah.
as adults.
All the
As the
adults
developers.
really enjoyed it, but didn't have